We interrupt your normal activities to bring you this important message. Hello, this is Cliff Potts. It is May 17th, 2011. Welcome. For those of you who need to be reminded of the restrictions on labor rights, as if you have any already, as I needed to be reminded, here is the Labor Management Relations Act, Publication L, 80-101, 61, Statute 136, enacted on June 23rd, 1947. It is informally referred to as the Taft-Hartley Act. The Taft-Hartley Act was one of more than 250 union-related bills pending in both houses of Congress in 1947. As a response to rising union radicalism and Cold War hostilities, the bill could be seen as a response by business to the post-World War II labor upsurge of 1946. During the year after the VJ Day, more than 5 million American workers were involved in strikes, which lasted on average 4 times longer than those during the war. Actually, there were very few strikes during the war. The Taft-Hartley Act was seen as a means to demobilize the labor movement by imposing limits on labor's ability to strike and by prohibiting radicals from their leadership. This law in and of itself is similarly illegal in that, according to the Constitution, you cannot be held accountable for the actions of the people you are associated with. But that's something the right really doesn't want you to know about. To protect the rights of individual employees in their relationships with labor, let's take a look at something here. This, by the way, is all from Wikipedia. I should cite that as I go into it. The amendments enacted in the Taft-Hartley added a list of prohibited actions or unfair labor practices on the part of unions to the NLRB, or National Labor Relations Board, which had previously only prohibited unfair labor practices committed by the employers. The Taft-Hartley Act prohibited jurisdictional strikes, wildcat strikes, solidarity or political strikes, secondary boycotts, secondary and mass picketing, closed shops, and monetary donations by unions to federal political campaigns. It also required union officers to sign a non-communist affidavit with the government. Union shops were heavily restricted, and states were allowed to pass the right to work laws that outlawed union shops. Furthermore, the executive branch of the federal government could obtain a legal strike-breaking injunction if an impending or current strike imperiled the national health or safety. A test of this has been interpreted broadly by the courts. So that means that the longshoremen on the East Coast cannot call a sympathy strike in support of the public workers in Wisconsin, Ohio, Massachusetts, Florida. These laws were written specifically in favor of business management so they could do basically whatever they damn well pleased, which is what they're doing now. So the question is, when are we going to realize that the world is owned by very few people and the rest of us can go hang? That ownership of the world is controlled by laws written in England before the 1340s. Don't you think we need to review this? haven't we evolved and populated beyond the point that out-of-date English law written before the great pestilence has any relevancy today? Okay, here's a question for you. Another question. Let's presume the system is not broken. Let's go far to say it is actually working the way it's supposed to. Is this winner-take-all system really what works best for 6 billion people living on the earth today? Is that really where we're at? Is that where we want to be? What do you think about that? Now, I'm going to take a quantum leap in the arguments we've had so far. And I'm going to go from discussing business practices, to property rights. Now, why would one take such a quantum leap? Well, it's simple. Everything has to do with who owns what. And since World War II, after we murdered so many people in the name of capitalism, capitalism had to claim its victory. And all of this is rooted in the rights of property, which is where you get this wild-ass cockamamie concept that we, as individuals, once we go to work for a company, are somehow their property. So let's take a look at property rights just for a second. And we'll, configure this in such a way that is understood by even the simplest of you out there. I hope what I'm about to tell you actually works for you. We'll find out. Here we go. There's this idea out there that you own land. No, you don't. That land is owned by the state. How do I know this? See what happens when you try to secede from the rest of the community you live in. I'm not talking about secession from the federal government. I'm talking about secession all the way down to the local level. Let's see what happens. People have this idea, you guys have this idea, that you own that piece of property you're sitting on. Really? I don't think so. As a matter of fact, if you're holding on some mortgage, you don't own anything. You own the responsibility for that property. You don't own that property. And if you manage to sell it, which is really selling the paper, the difference in what you bought it for and what it has increased over value when you sell it is all you're going to get back. Basically, what you're getting back is the monetary value, the increase of value for being the caretaker for that property. You don't own anything. I want you to get that through your head. Anyway, that's all the wonderful things we have to say today. I personally think it's about time you fix your system. I think it's broken. You got to figure out what you're going to do about it. With that, I say this is Cliff Potts. May your God go with you. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye for now.